The moment I walked into the office on Monday morning, I felt the tension crackling in the air like static before a storm. Whispers zipped across desks, and heads dipped quickly whenever I passed. I didn't need to ask what was going on. I'd been at the concert on Saturday night, center stage, watching it unfold on the giant screen with 20,000 strangers. There they were, Martin Ellis, CEO of Horizon Analytics, Tamara Reed, our HR director, caught on the kiss cam, locked in an embrace that made the entire arena roar with laughter and gasps, both of them married, but not to each other. By Sunday morning, the video had gone viral. Clients, partners, even board members had seen it. And by Monday morning, Martin Ellis was out for blood. I was in the middle of logging into my workstation when I heard it. "Kira, my office, now." His voice sliced through the open space like a whip. Heads swiveled. Some coworkers winced. I stood, calmly straightened my blazer, and followed him. Inside his office, the door clicked shut with a finality that felt deliberate. Martin slammed a folder onto his desk, eyes burning. "You arranged this." I blinked, expression neutral. "I'm sorry?" "The concert, the tickets, the seats." His mouth twisted in a sneer. "You set us up. You made sure we were on that camera, and now I'm holding you accountable." He shoved a termination letter across the desk. My name already printed at the top. I picked it up slowly. Read the first few lines. Grounds for immediate dismissal. Breach of trust. Conflict of interest. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I simply looked up and met his eyes. "I understand." For a split second, something flickered in his expression. Surprise? Disappointment that I wasn't begging for my job? "You'll have security escort you out in 20 minutes. Hand over your badge, phone, and laptop before you leave." I nodded once. Of course. I turned and walked out without another word. I didn't go back to my desk. I didn't say goodbye. I just walked straight to the elevator, my personal phone already buzzing in my pocket. One new message from Claire, marketing director. "Is it true? You're out?" I typed back, "Looks like it, no worries." Because it wasn't just about Saturday night, not by a long shot. I'd known about Martin's affairs long before the kiss cam fiasco. Tamara wasn't the first. She wasn't even the fourth. Over the past 2 years, I'd quietly collected every breadcrumb, forwarded emails, calendar invites sent at 2 a.m., receipts charged to the corporate card, signed off by Martin himself. Affairs were just the tip of the iceberg. Hidden payouts to silence whistleblowers. Fake invoices submitted to inflate quarterly reports. Vendor kickbacks disguised as consulting fees. I hadn't said a word. Not yet. Because I knew the day would come when I'd need it. 20 minutes later, I placed my badge and company phone into the waiting security guard's outstretched hand. He gave me a sympathetic look. "Sorry, Kira. Orders from the top." I smiled. No hard feelings. I stepped outside into the summer air, took a deep breath, and pulled out my personal phone. I scrolled through my files. Everything neatly categorized. Transactions, email threads, wire transfers, screenshots. The manila folder Martin had pushed across his desk meant nothing. He thought firing me would silence me. What he didn't know? I wasn't planning to fight him for my job. I was planning to fight for something much bigger. By noon, I was sitting at a quiet cafe downtown. Laptop open. Coffee untouched. Across from me sat David Chen, Horizon's chief compliance officer. His eyes darted nervously around before locking on mine. "You said you had something urgent." I slid a flash drive across the table. "Let's talk about Martin Ellis, and how much damage control you'll need before the board finds out everything I know." His hand trembled slightly as he picked it up. This wasn't about revenge. Not yet. This was the opening move, and Martin had just handed me the perfect reason to make it. David Chen didn't touch his coffee. He stared at the flash drive on the cafe table like it was ticking. "Kira, This is serious. His voice dropped to a near whisper. If what you're implying is true? It's all there, I said calmly. With timestamps, originals, correspondence, financial records. David's hands hovered over the flash drive before he finally pocketed it. I can't make promises, he said carefully, but I'll take this to legal. I gave him a small, polite smile. You don't have to. I already did. His head jerked up. I folded my hands. I sent copies to corporate counsel this morning, and the board chair. This is just a courtesy. David closed his eyes for a long second, processing. He wasn't a bad man, just a careful one. He'd kept his hands clean by never asking questions, and right now he realized he might be standing on a sinking ship. I assume you have a plan. I do. I met his eyes evenly. And it starts with the board knowing exactly who they've been trusting with their company. By Tuesday morning, the first crack appeared. I wasn't in the building, of course. I was persona non grata now, but I didn't need to be. Claire from marketing texted me at 9:12 a.m. Emergency board meeting called. No agenda listed. Martin looks pale. I allowed myself a small smile, because I knew why. On Monday night, after my meeting with David, I'd forwarded a formal report to Horizon Analytics board chair, Eleanor Price. Eleanor wasn't the typical corporate puppet. She was a former federal prosecutor who'd built her reputation on corporate fraud cases before joining Horizon's board. I'd attached everything: the fake invoices, the falsified expense reports, the hush money payments buried in department budgets. And I'd added a simple professional cover note. As a former Horizon employee, I believe it is my ethical duty to disclose this information to the board. Please find attached evidence of repeated unethical and potentially illegal conduct by CEO Martin Ellis. I am available for questions. At exactly 10:04 a.m., I got an email from Eleanor herself. Short and to the point. Kira, thank you for bringing this to our attention. We are reviewing the materials. Please expect a follow-up by end of week. Regards, Eleanor. I read it twice. Then I closed my laptop. The wheels were turning, but I wasn't done. I reached out to 2 ex-colleagues, both in finance, both quietly fed up with Martin's manipulations, and they'd been waiting for someone to start this. By Wednesday, I had affidavits signed, detailing how Martin had pressured them into adjusting quarterly forecasts. Claire messaged me again that afternoon. HR called in. Board's requesting Tamara's resignation. I typed back, "Just Tamara?" Her reply came with a winking emoji. "For now." That evening, I met with Jordan Blake, a journalist from The Ledger, a respected business news outlet. We'd known each other professionally for years. He trusted my word. And more importantly, he trusted my documentation. "I'm not asking you to publish anything yet," I told him as we sat in a quiet bar, the hum of evening traffic outside. "I just want you to know, if a story breaks, I want it to be accurate." Jordan leafed through a handful of printed documents I'd brought. Nothing confidential, nothing that would compromise legal action, but enough to paint a very ugly picture. "Looks like a pattern," Jordan said quietly. "A bad one." "Exactly." I met his eyes, and it's been happening right under the board's nose. Thursday morning, the fallout began to spread inside Horizon. Claire's message came in at 8:50 a.m. David Chen requested a closed-door session with the board this morning. Martin looked not happy. At noon, compliance team locked in legal's office. No one knows why. By 3 p.m., Tamara's LinkedIn updated. Open to work. She's out. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The cracks weren't cracks anymore. They were fractures. But I knew Martin. He wasn't going to go down without a fight. I could already imagine his next move. Deny everything, blame subordinates, threaten legal action against disgruntled employees. That was his pattern. Which is why, that night, I drafted one more email. Subject line, formal request for whistleblower protection recipient, Eleanor Price, board chair. Attached, my formal statement under legal counsel. I hit send. Then I leaned back in my chair. The first move had been made. The board was watching. The press was circling. And Martin Ellis? He was running out of places to hide. By Friday morning, Martin finally played his hand. I wasn't surprised. In fact, I'd been waiting for it. At exactly 8:17 a.m., my personal phone buzzed with a notification. Cease and desist letter, Horizon Analytics. Delivered via email by Dawson and Harlow LLP, the law firm Martin kept on retainer. I opened the document with a calm I didn't entirely feel. Cease any and all defamatory statements regarding Mr. Ellis. Unauthorized use of confidential company information. Further action will be pursued if this matter is not resolved immediately. I read the 2-page letter twice. Then I forwarded it to my attorney, Renee Collins, with a brief note. Expected this. Your move. By 9:30 a.m., Renee responded. Standard intimidation tactic. No merit. Already drafting response. I smiled. Renee wasn't just any attorney. She specialized in corporate whistleblower cases. When I'd first contacted her weeks ago, I'd already suspected things might get ugly. She was why I'd documented everything with forensic precision. Every screenshot time-stamped. Every email traceable. Every file secured on encrypted drives. I wasn't naive. I knew Martin would try to scare me off with legal threats before the board could act. But I also knew the truth. And I knew how to protect myself. At 10:12 a.m., Claire messaged me again. Big blow-up in the executive conference room. Martin stormed out. Eleanor called for a board-only meeting after. At 11:45 a.m., it's doing a forensic audit on Martin's accounts. That's gotta be bad. I typed back, it is. I knew exactly what they'd find. Or rather, what they wouldn't. Because 3 months ago, I'd discovered that Martin had been rerouting company funds through a shell vendor account. Harper Consulting. A firm that didn't exist outside of 2 fake invoices and a P.O. box in Delaware. I hadn't touched that evidence yet. I'd been waiting for the right moment. At 1:05 p.m., Eleanor herself called me. Not an email. A direct call. I stepped into a quiet hallway before answering. Kira, this is Eleanor Price. Good afternoon, Eleanor. Her voice was calm, controlled, but underneath I could hear the current. I wanted to inform you personally. The board has opened a formal internal investigation into Mr. Ellis. We've engaged independent auditors. We'll need your cooperation. Of course. I replied evenly. I'll provide any documentation required. And for the record, she added, we've reviewed the cease and desist you received this morning. That was not authorized by the board. I allowed a small, knowing pause. Understood. Eleanor exhaled, a slight softening in her tone. You've handled this with professionalism, Kira. We'll be in touch. By late afternoon, the pressure inside Horizon's headquarters had reached a boiling point. Miguel, a senior analyst from finance, messaged me. Word is Martin's trying to pin the Harper Consulting invoices on lower management. I shook my head, almost impressed by his nerve. Classic Martin. Blame downward, protect upward. But this time, it wasn't going to work. At 5:30 p.m., I met Renee at her office downtown. She handed me a sealed envelope, her formal response to Martin's cease and desist, filed with both Horizon's board and their external counsel. You're fully protected under federal whistleblower statutes, Renee said firmly, and I've made it clear any further intimidation will be met with immediate legal action. I nodded, taking a slow breath. This isn't just about Martin anymore, I said quietly. It's about the culture he created, the people he used, manipulated, threw under the bus. Renee gave me a rare smile. And now they're all watching him fall apart. By By the time I got home, Claire had sent one last message for the day. Rumor: Martin tried to tender his resignation. Eleanor refused. They want him on the record for everything first. I replied, smart. Because if Martin walked now, he'd control the narrative. But if they forced him to answer, under investigation, the board would have every reason to sever him with cause. No golden parachute, no soft landing, no exit bonus. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and opened my laptop. I wasn't celebrating. Not yet. But for the first time in years, I felt steady. Because Martin Ellis had finally realized something critical. I wasn't the weak link he thought I was. I wasn't a disposable employee. I was the fuse he'd lit himself. And now he was watching the countdown. By Monday morning, the news inside Horizon Analytics wasn't whispered anymore. It was open conversation. I knew because Claire called me at 8:05 a.m., her voice low but urgent. They've suspended Martin, effective immediately. I felt a pulse in my chest but kept my tone even. Internal email? Company-wide, just went out 5 minutes ago. Official reason, pending results of an internal audit. I closed my eyes for a brief second. That was fast. Faster than I'd expected. Claire hesitated on the line. And Kira. Eleanor's coming in for an all-hands at noon. She's making a statement. I let that settle. Eleanor wasn't known for hand-holding. If she was addressing the entire company herself, this wasn't damage control anymore. This was the start of a leadership purge. By noon, I was sitting in a cafe near Horizon's headquarters. Claire kept me updated via text like a live news ticker. Eleanor just walked into the main auditorium. Martin's not here. Compliance team flanking her. Then, a minute later, she's confirming the investigation. Commitment to transparency. Accountability at the highest level. And finally, says they'll be restructuring leadership after findings. Everyone's dead silent. I exhaled slowly. This wasn't just about Martin anymore. This was systemic. And Eleanor knew it. At 3 p.m., I met David Chen again. This time at a neutral spot. A quiet bench by the river, far from Horizon's walls. He looked exhausted. But more than that, resolved. Eleanor asked me to help lead the audit, he said without preamble. She wants full cooperation from every department. That's good, I said softly. They'll need you. David shook his head. Kira, Martin's been doing this for longer than anyone guessed. Tomorrow wasn't even the start. He showed me a list, a grim catalog of names, junior employees, contractors, even a former client liaison. Some of them had left quietly. Others had been paid off. And buried among the names were payments, falsified as consulting fees, vendor reimbursements, even employee wellness bonuses. It wasn't a pattern. It was a system. And Martin had built it himself. At 5:30 p.m., I got a call from Eleanor. Kira, I've reviewed your formal statement again. Yes? I kept my tone calm, professional. I'd like you to come in tomorrow morning, speak with the auditors directly. I blinked, caught slightly off guard. Of course, if that's helpful. It is. Eleanor's voice softened a fraction. I want your perspective on how this went on for so long, and how we can stop it from happening again. I understood immediately. This wasn't just about evidence. This was about reform, about setting a precedent. I'll be there, I promised. By Tuesday, Martin Ellis was a ghost inside Horizon Analytics. No nameplate on the executive board list. No office access. His assistant reassigned. Claire texted me at 10 a.m. They revoked his access pass, walked him out with security. He didn't say a word. I didn't celebrate, because I knew better. People like Martin didn't go quietly. At 11 a.m., I sat across from Horizon's external auditors in a glass-walled conference room. Ironically, the same one where Martin had once called me in to fire me. Now, I was here by invitation. I laid out everything with clinical precision. How Martin had manipulated budgets. How Tamara had helped shift payout structures. How junior employees had been pressured into silence. How leadership ignored red flags. Every answer I gave, I backed with a file. Dates, names, accounts. The auditors didn't interrupt. They took notes. And at the end, one of them, a senior partner named Lisa Grant, leaned forward. "You documented everything?" "Yes." "Why?" I met her gaze evenly. Because I knew sooner or later I'd need to prove it. Lisa nodded slowly, almost with respect. When I walked out of that room, I passed Eleanor in the hallway. She paused, meeting my eyes directly. "You handled this with more integrity than half my board." I gave a small, honest smile. I learned a long time ago. If you don't protect your own reputation, no one else will. Eleanor nodded once. "Stay close, Kira. I suspect we'll be seeing more of each other." That night, Claire sent me one last text before I turned in. Martin's lawyer leaked a statement. Claims he's the victim of a smear campaign, blaming disgruntled former employees. I stared at the message, unsurprised. It was Martin's last predictable move. And it wasn't going to work. Not this time. Because now, the truth wasn't just mine. It belonged to everyone watching. By Thursday morning, the headlines hit. Horizon Analytics CEO under internal investigation. Sources, cite financial misconduct. The Ledger broke the story first, with Jordan Blake's byline right at the top. The article was cautious, quoting sources familiar with the matter, and citing Horizon's official statement about ongoing internal review. But it was enough. Enough for clients to start asking questions. Enough for shareholders to start dialing the board. Enough for the cracks in Martin's carefully crafted image to shatter wide open. I was sitting in Renee's office when the article went live. She skimmed the piece, lips pressed together in a thin, satisfied line. "Not defamatory," she said, tapping the printout. "Every claim is backed by existing board action or public record. He'll try to deny it, but this sticks." I nodded quietly. It wasn't about revenge, not anymore. It was about accountability, about making sure no one else got chewed up by a man like Martin Ellis. At noon, Claire texted me again. Martin showed up at HQ, tried to talk to Eleanor. Security stopped him. I typed back, "He's desperate." But I knew it wouldn't stop there. And I was right. At 3:27 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, until curiosity won out. I answered. "Kira." It was Martin. I recognized the polished, almost lazy drawl he used when trying to play charming. "I think we've both let this get out of hand," he began. "I'd like to propose a conversation. Off the record. Just you and me." I stared at the wall in front of me, every instinct in my body going still. "Why?" I asked calmly. "Because," Martin said, his voice dropping into a conspiratorial tone. "We both know how these things look from the outside. Mistakes get exaggerated. Careers get ruined. I don't want that for you." I almost laughed. There it was. Martin's real play. A thinly veiled threat. "You think I'm worried about my career?" I asked quietly. A pause. "I'm offering you a way out of this," he said, voice sharpening. "Walk away, say nothing else, and I'll make sure you're looked after." I pictured him, probably pacing in some overpriced office, trying to salvage control the only way he knew how. I smiled slightly. "Martin," I said softly, "I'm not the one who needs a way out." I hung up. By Friday morning, Horizon's board released a formal statement. Following a comprehensive internal audit, Horizon Analytics confirms the immediate termination of Martin Ellis for cause, effective today. The board remains committed to transparency and corporate integrity. They didn't mince words. They didn't offer soft explanations. And for once, they didn't protect him. I sat in Eleanor's office that afternoon. She poured 2 cups of black coffee before sitting opposite me. "I wanted to say thank you, Kira," she said simply. "You didn't have to come forward. Many wouldn't have." I met her eyes. "I didn't do it for the company, or the board." Eleanor nodded. "I know." She sipped her coffee, studying me carefully. "I'm extending an offer. Head of Ethics and Compliance. Horizon needs someone who's proven they can stand their ground, and I'd like that person to be you." I blinked, surprised despite everything. "Eleanor," she smiled faintly. "Think about it." And for the first time, I did. At 6 p.m., Claire sent me one last message for the day. Martin's lawyer released a statement. No comment. He's gone. I stared at the words for a moment. It didn't feel like victory. Not exactly. It felt like closure. The kind you get when you finally shut a door you should have closed years ago. I stepped outside into the early evening air. The city felt sharper, cleaner somehow. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was fighting a current. Because Martin Ellis wasn't just out of Horizon. He was out of places to run. And out of people willing to protect him. The following Monday morning felt strange. For the first time in years, I wasn't rushing through traffic or preparing for a tense executive meeting. I was sitting in a small corner cafe, the same one where I'd first handed David Chen that flash drive. The storm had passed. Martin Ellis was out. Horizon Analytics was in cleanup mode. And me? I had a decision to make. Eleanor's offer sat in my inbox, flagged and waiting. Head of Ethics and Compliance. Horizon Analytics, a full executive package, complete autonomy over internal investigations, direct reporting line to the board. It was the kind of position most people would kill for. But I wasn't sure I wanted it. After everything I'd seen, after everything I'd fought through, was it enough to walk back into the same building, wearing a different title? I stirred my coffee slowly, thinking about all the faces I'd worked with. The ones who'd quietly endured Martin's behavior. The ones who had stayed silent because speaking up had always meant risking everything. And the ones who had been pushed out, discarded when they became inconvenient. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I was tired. At noon, I met Claire for lunch. She slid into the booth across from me, her usual quick smile softening when she saw my expression. "So, have you decided?" I shook my head. "Not yet." Claire exhaled, folding her hands on the table. "You'd be good at it, Kira. Better than anyone they could bring in." "I know." I said it without pride, just fact. "But?" she prompted gently. I took a slow breath. "I'm just not sure I want to spend the next chapter of my life cleaning up after people like Martin." Claire nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "That's fair." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment before she added quietly, "But maybe it's not about cleaning up after them. Maybe it's about making sure there's never another Martin in the first place." I looked at her, really looked. And for the first time, I wondered if this wasn't about revenge. Or even redemption. Maybe it was about legacy. That evening, I called Eleanor. She answered on the first ring. "Kira, I've thought about your offer." "And?" I smiled slightly. "I'll take it, but on my terms." Eleanor chuckled softly. "I expected nothing less. Let's meet tomorrow morning to discuss." 1 week later, I walked back into Horizon Analytics. But this time, I wasn't the woman quietly gathering evidence in the shadows. I wasn't the dismissed employee. I wasn't the whistleblower fighting for survival. I was the head of Ethics and Compliance, and my first meeting was with the entire leadership team. I stood at the front of the main conference room, the same room where Martin once stood, spinning half-truths and empty promises. Now, every executive in Horizon sat facing me. Some wary, some curious, some openly skeptical. I met their eyes, one by one. This company let things slide for far too long. I began, my voice steady. We normalized behaviors we should have condemned. We ignored red flags because they were inconvenient. We protected people who should have been held accountable. I let that sink in before continuing. That ends today. A ripple moved through the room. Faint, but real. We're not here to patch holes. We're here to rebuild trust from the ground up. And if you can't get behind that, this is your opportunity to step aside now. Silence. Then, slowly, David Chen gave a small nod. Others followed. By the time I finished, the mood had shifted. I wasn't asking for loyalty. I was setting the standard. 3 months later, Horizon Analytics rolled out its first transparent ethics program. Real reporting channels. Anonymous protections for whistleblowers. Mandatory leadership accountability audits. It wasn't perfect. Change never is. But it was a start. One evening, after a long day, I found myself looking out over the city skyline from my new office. Claire knocked softly on the doorframe. "You good?" she asked. I smiled. "I'm good." We stood there for a moment before she added, "You know, people talk. They say you turned this place upside down." I shrugged. Maybe. Or maybe I just turned it right side up. Claire laughed quietly, stepping back toward the door. "Either way, it's better with you here." As I watched her leave, I thought back to that moment when Martin handed me my termination papers, convinced he was silencing me. What he didn't know? He wasn't ending my career. He was handing me the microphone. Because sometimes you don't burn bridges. You rebuild them, the right way. And you make sure the wrong people never get to cross them again.